Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. It's the first Monday of August. It's also been 80 days, just over 11 weeks, since the May 16th tornado. The EF3 weather event damaged more than 10,000 buildings, including homes, businesses, schools, libraries. But it also had a huge impact on an integral part of our environment and ecosystem, our trees. Later in the hour, we'll talk about our relationships as individuals and communities with trees and how we've collectively been affected by tree loss. But to start today's show, we're focusing on the environment and ecology. Here to do that, we welcome two guests. First, we have Elise Schaefer. Elise is Policy Coordinator for the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. Elise, welcome.
Thank you so much.
We also have Rebecca Hankins, who is Partnership Manager for Forest Relief of Missouri. Rebecca, welcome to you as well.
Thank you, Elaine.
Okay, thank you both for being here today. So the number of buildings that have sustained damage, we've heard that cited often since May 16th. But the number of trees is not one that I've heard anything about. Rebecca, do you have an estimate on how many trees were lost?
So, Elaine, I reached out to Commissioner Jankowski to find out this number, and it's really hard to quantify at this moment in time. The count is currently 2,000, but he estimates thousands more. And as the days continue, they will be continuing to count that tree loss.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some idea of what is being counted as a loss?
At this point, it's the total removal of that tree, so the stumps.
Mm-hmm. So the tornado tore through St. Louis City and County. When we look at the breakdown by area, do we have any insight into where more of these trees were lost than others?
It's hard to say at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Elise, have you heard anything even just anecdotally from people about where they've seen tree stumps, where they've seen damage?
You know, it was really everywhere that the tornado touched down that people were seeing their favorite trees lost.
Yeah.
The number I heard in Forest Park was thousands alone. And of course, where there are more trees, people are going to notice those losses more. So, but really, I think everywhere that was damaged experienced tree loss.
And as people who live here in St. Louis, what were you feeling after May 16th and seeing some of the damage to trees, Elise?
It was devastating. I mean, the loss of life was a tragedy, of course, but trees bring so much to our communities. Trees cool our neighborhoods down. They bring biodiversity. They do things like increase property values and can lower your utility bill if you've got a big shade tree. So seeing that essential infrastructure taken away from neighborhoods that were already historically underinvested in and historically redlined was absolutely devastating.
Mm-hmm. How about for you, Rebecca?
I agree with Elise. It's to see those tree canopy on the ground, barricading streets, on homes. It's a loss so profound, in addition to the loss of home and property, and to know that it takes so long for a tree to grow, and to lose that, all of that growth and all of that shade and all the benefits that trees provide in just a matter of hours. It's really sad.
And we're going to get into some of those benefits a little bit later in the conversation. But as far as the tree damage itself, Rebecca, do you have anything to share about why there was so much damage to begin with?
Well, Elaine, no tree is immune to a tornado. Even the most healthy, sturdy oak tree can come down in such a significant storm. But we know that trees that are already have defects are poor structured, are weaker trees. We affectionately call those weed trees. Those are more likely to come down in a storm.
And what are weed trees?
So weed trees are those that grow really fast, and their ability to grow really fast makes them weak. And so these would be your tree of heaven, your Siberian elms, your silver maples. These are those trees that come up quickly in a forest environment as pioneer species, which are great, but not so great in an urban landscape.
And are they planted on purpose?
Most of the time, no. These are trees you actually find along fence lines and in alleyways that are dropped by birds, and so they're not in an ideal location, and they're just not an ideal tree.
In your work around policy, Elise, we've talked with folks from Forest Relief before. One of the trees that has been planted everywhere is that calorie pear, the Bradford pear. There are some other adjectives I can think of for that. And you've actually done trade for people to bring those in, and then you all at Forest Relief will give them another one. How widespread a problem is trees that are not strong enough to withstand the weather conditions of this area?
I mean, to echo what Rebecca said, no tree is immune to the hundreds of miles an hour wind that tornadoes can bring down. But certainly we want to see better tree canopy planted across the city. Having it be a matter of policy would be fantastic. That would make sure that as future generations continue to plant trees in our city, we have the right trees in the right places, again, as Rebecca said, so that we can make sure that our city's tree canopy is healthy and continuing to give us all those great benefits, barring a major disaster that we know trees will bring to us and all of our neighbors.
And improper planting is also an issue, isn't it?
It is. So trees need a specific amount of space to grow. I know Rebecca has the details better down pat than I do, but you can really give a tree too little space in those tree lawns between the sidewalk and the street. And the sizes of those are really variable across the city. So you want to make sure if you're planting a tree, or when the city's planting a tree, they pay close attention to this, that you have the right amount of space for the size of tree you're trying to grow.
What does not enough space mean for the stability of trees and for where they're planted, Rebecca?
Yeah, so the root structure of a tree is what anchors it into the ground and keeps it really stable, because the canopy on top can be really large and make it unbalanced. And so you need that balance below the surface. And so when you have a really small planting space, it doesn't allow for that root to grow as big as it should to really support the canopy on top that we see.
So the canopy, I think, is something that we can appreciate as being beneficial, especially when it's hot out. It provides some shade. And you had talked, Elise, about some of these benefits of having trees. In urban areas in particular, can you put a finer point on the kinds of benefits that people experience in their day-to-day?
Absolutely. And my work focuses specifically on the urban heat island. So that's an effect whereby our city experiences hotter temperatures than the surrounding areas, the suburbs or the rural areas, and trees do a massive amount to help combat that. So you can see, depending on the density of trees that are planted and how old those trees are, that we can see between 2 and 9 degrees Fahrenheit of cooling just from trees. So imagine that your house is under the hot, hot sun with no tree to cover it. You're already, I know my Ameren bill was $400 last month if I had a big old shade tree in front of my house helping to cool it down. That might have lowered my bill significantly, in addition to all of the aesthetic and biodiversity benefits that trees bring.
Biodiversity, touch on that with us.
Everything needs a place to live, right? So it's not just the squirrels and the rabbits, things that raccoons can live in your dumpster or survive. Like, you need all of the great sort of microbiomes that trees bring. And I am sure Rebecca might have some more thoughts on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Trees also are a great source of pollination. Most people think about pollinating plants during the summer, but trees are actually the first source of pollination for insects in the spring, and are just provide such a rich source of nectar and life for the biodiversity that they host.
Mm-hmm. In the winter, too, what are some of the benefits of having trees? I mean, we're coming up on what feels like finally the end of some really hot weather. But as we look ahead to this first fall and winter post-tornado, what are some of the benefits that we'll be missing because of this tree loss, Elise?
Gosh, so when I think about the wintertime benefits of trees and those longer term benefits, trees are carbon sinks. So they capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and we know that the earth is warming at an alarming rate. And as we continue to burn fossil fuels, that would continue even if we stopped burning fossil fuels today. But trees will help us capture some of that carbon and make our planet longer term cooler, healthier. Even as we enter fall and winter.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, you had mentioned how long it takes for a tree to grow. When we're thinking about timeline, when are we going to see the effects of tree loss? What effects can we expect to see or anticipate as we move farther away from the tornado itself?
Well, the effects are immediate. I mean, we see that damage and it's impacting our communities right now. And it will take a long time to recover and to replant all of those trees that we have lost. Over the next decade, we will continue replanting. The city has plans in place, and Forest Relief is working closely with City Forestry and the City of St. Louis to plan strategic tree plantings, because it's not just putting a tree in the ground, but at this point, it's really about planting the right trees and planting them in partnership with the communities that are receiving them.
Why is that partnership with community so important?
So they're the ones who are living and actively using those spaces. And it is important that they are confident and comfortable in those spaces. Only they know what's best for their community. And so partnering with them and hearing their voice and input is so valuable in the work that we do, so that the plantings they're effective in the long term, because we want those trees to survive. The first 2 years of a tree's life are the most vulnerable for that tree. And so we want to make sure that when we plant trees, we're planting them to stay.
Mm-hmm. With this planting process, from your perspective, as someone who's a tree and environmental expert, what is it that you think the city of St. Louis in particular should prioritize?
The city will do what is best for them, which is getting trees in the ground and making sure that trees are available. And so as a partner with the city, we come in and can help bring some of those additional resources to that, which is reaching out to the community. It is helping to educate and bring the knowledge about why trees are so important, to help really find a way forward so that tree canopy is intentional and resilient.
Mm-hmm. How does tree policy come into the picture here, Elise?
So we can see examples from across the country and really even from across the region of other municipalities that have tree policies in place that really protect trees, and not just trees that are owned by the city, like the ones in your tree lawn that are in the public right-of-way or are in our public parks, but trees on private property as well. Ladue and Webster Groves have really fantastic tree preservation policies. And it would be fantastic to see the city of St. Louis take this moment and say, we really need something in place to help protect our city trees too. It's even more important here when we have a higher concentration of impervious surfaces, of the beautiful, beautiful brick that makes up the fabric of our city. Those things hang on to heat. So we need those trees even more, and we can and should pass some policies to protect that essential public infrastructure in order to make sure that those trees last through our lifetimes and beyond.
One of the things I had mentioned in our introduction is that we want to hear from people about how tree loss affects them personally. So there's the policy level, then there's the personal level. And one of the things that we heard from a user on Reddit, Canada432, said, I know it sounds callous, but this was the stuff that really hit me hard. Buildings can be rebuilt, stuff can be replaced, but all the old trees will take decades to be replaced if they ever are at all. St. Louis's trees give the area so much character, and it just feels so bare and soulless without them. It just feels like there's gaps in the environment. We also want to hear from you. How has losing trees affected you? Send us an email at talk@stlpr.org. We wanted to make sure to pop that in there so that you all know we're going to be talking about this throughout the hour. I think this also gets to some of the disparities in how trees that have been destroyed have been cleared, how they haven't been cleared. And it may be very easy to say that it's a cost savings to plant trees, to take care of trees, and that it is a cost-efficient way to deal with climate change. But if we're going to keep things very real, money is one resource, and time and human energy are two others that are absolutely necessary to care for trees because they are alive. They require care. They have needs. On the one hand, we could think of them as annoyances, but on the other, they can become burdens. Can you speak to that, Rebecca?
Yeah, so Forest Relief really strives to encourage people to see those benefits of trees. It is so important. And we are actively stewarding trees because we know it is the right thing to do. So all the trees that Forest Relief plants in the region, we are stewarding. So we're stewarding over 1,000 trees in city parks. And we are also stewarding 500 street trees. So in a new partnership with the city, Relief St. Louis was born, and that is us actively planting street trees in partnership with the city. So we will be planting 1,600 street trees this fall and winter, in addition to whatever the city is planting, and we will be actively stewarding those. But we know that having homeowners also invest their time and energy into caring for the trees that get planted in front of their homes will make a huge difference in reestablishing that tree canopy.
What are the right trees?
So we would say native trees. So in Missouri, we grow over 40 species of native trees at Forest Relief, and these trees are well suited, adapted in essence for our climate. And so we want to focus on planting those trees over those invasive non-native trees.
And Elise, as we close, what are some of the takeaways, for everyday people? How is it that folks can, care for trees to ensure, a long, healthy life? And are there ways, and maybe this is something for each of you, where people can protect themselves from the kinds of hazards that naturally come from trees that can grow, next to homes? Inevitably there will be other storms.
Of course. And I think it's really important for someone like me who is white and lives in South City to recognize the huge trauma that this storm had on a historically Black and underinvested neighborhood. I would be scared to plant another tree if I had just had one fall on my home or in front of my home and it hadn't been cleaned up quickly, or maybe still isn't cleaned up. That would be terrifying. That would be horrible. It would be frustrating. And I hope that the efforts of folks like Rebecca and Forest Relief, who are really embedded in the community and are available to talk to people who are nervous about what the next tree might look like, or are nervous about what their current tree might look like come the next storm, to do your research and to talk to the experts, because I guarantee that that tree is bringing loads of benefit to your neighborhood, if not to you personally. And talking to an arborist, talking to a specialist about how to take care of it properly so that it can continue to bring you those benefits as safely as possible is huge.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to quickly add before we close, Rebecca?
Yeah. So understanding the right tree for the planting space is really important. And there are small, medium, and large trees. So knowing what space that tree can hold is very important. Additionally, pruning is very efficient in keeping that tree healthy. So pruning a tree while it's still young can help maintain the shape in a way that it prevents that poor structure later on in life. So that is one way to really prolong a tree's life, and something that can empower a homeowner to feel confident that they are planting something for the future that will be around for a long time.
Rebecca Hankins is Partnership Manager for Forest Relief of Missouri, and Elise Schaefer is Policy Coordinator for the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. Elise and Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Elaine.
We need to take a quick break, but before we do that, we want to hear from you. We heard from someone who sent a note in response to a Reddit comment. It reads, "The biggest blow for me was the willow tree by the bridge that leads to the boathouse. This is in Forest Park. My girlfriend and I were always drawn to it, and it added magic and shelter to our walks. I frequently sought it out on my own as well. I met other people under it who were also drawn to it. On the night after the tornado, I rode my bike into the park to see the damage. I was gutted to see when I saw it on its side. I kind of hoped they would leave it and maybe it would grow still like some trees do. It was another heavy blow when I came by in a week or later and saw that it was just gone now. I'm still really trying to get used to how the park looks. It's really difficult. I didn't understand how much all these trees and landmarks meant to me." So we'd like to hear from you. How has losing trees affected you? Send us an email at talk@stlpr.org or give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 314-382-TALK. We'll be right back. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
This is St. Louis Public Radio. Support comes from Perrick Corporation. With a commitment to serving the St. Louis community through local partnerships and charitable support, guided by Perrick's core values. More at perrick.com/culture.
Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. Yesterday, I shared a photo on Facebook from 2015. It's a selfie with just some of my face, but it's mostly a picture to capture a paved path, autumn leaves, and trees. Trees along the Skinker Boulevard edge of Forest Park that no longer stand where they did for so many years. The response that came to that post was moving. It showed clearly that the relationship we have with trees as individuals and as communities is a significant part of how we understand our environment and our connections with it. Before we jump into our next conversation, I'd like to share a piece of St. Louisan Sheila Davis's story about a walnut tree that has been on her Big Mama's land for generations. That tree was damaged by the tornado and unfortunately will have to be removed.
When my children were young, I would bake walnut cookies, make walnut brittle, walnut bread pudding, and banana nut bread. Those walnut shells were so hard to crack open. My walnut tree is a symbol of strength, mobility, and legacy. Although it grew up leaning, everyone thought that it was going to fall. It stood through the tornado, but lost the top of it and lots of its branches. That tree is a part of my heritage. It has been here as long as I can remember, over 100 years old, part of the family history.
And that was St. Louis and Sheila Davis sharing about a walnut tree that has been part of her family over many, many decades. Joining us now to talk about humans' connections with and to trees, we welcome Rebecca Bennett, founder and principal of Emerging Wisdom and the In Power Institute. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Kelly Hicks Holloway, Community Conservation Coordinator for Forest Relief of Missouri. Thank you to you, too.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And welcome. Personal stories is where I'd like to start. Do each of you have a story of a tree that has meant something special to your family or to your community? Kelly?
Oh, a tree specifically that meant something special. I could speak to my sister's family.
Sure.
She had a grandmother who had, it wasn't necessarily a tree, but she had a strawberry patch in the front of her house in the Ville, an area that we prioritize with our Tree Zillions program. And it's interesting to go by there now and to see not only the fact that there were peach trees and strawberry patches and things like that in front of these homes, and now all of that is gone and a lot of it is bare. So it's great to know that at some point we will be planting more in those neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, so I'm not a St. Louis native. I'm from D.C. But when I moved to St. Louis and brought my first home in the city, it had a beautiful willow tree in the back. And that willow tree endured several storms where it lost some of its limbs, and it still managed to regenerate. And because of its beauty and its regenerative abilities, my husband and I named our first daughter Willow after the tree that was in our backyard.
Mm-hmm. In your backyard, in front of your home, you talk about D.C., Rebecca. You've talked about your sister's family and what was in front of their home. And place, I think, is something that is really important to start with as we begin a conversation about humans and their relationships. So as we discuss that, Rebecca, how is it that you understand the meaning of place?
Cool. Place is complex. I mean, I don't think we understand tree trauma or our relationships with trees without understanding the significance of place and how place shapes the human experience. Certainly when I think about the places that have shaped and formed me, place gives us a sense of home. Place gives us security. Place provides food. Place is the source of community and community connections. Place connects us to history. So we heard that beautiful story about the walnut tree, right? And there's a sense of history and longevity and continuity that comes with place, right? So place is rich and it informs our language, our culture, our identity. I'm from the South. I'm from the DMV. I'm from St. Louis, right? Place is significant. Where it gets complicated in the Black experience is that we have been summarily displaced many times on this side in terms of our American journey. And so we've left our homelands that had all of that place, and we came into the American landscape where the relationship with place was not of our own choosing and often was connected to forced servitude and a relationship with the land that was really about production, right? Our productivity and the production of the land. And then we were displaced, again, when we were sold with the domestic slave trade further south. And again, that relationship was reinforced. And if we tried to seek freedom, though, place, right, forested places, tree-lined spaces that provided cover could give us the kind of cover where we could try to make our ways to better life or to freedom as we imagined it. So we have a complicated history with these lands and with place, and that informs how we relate to landscape and how we relate to the other beings that define that landscape, like trees.
Kelly, I'd like to hear about the start of the Trezilliance program, and that is also very place-based, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. So, Trezilliance was created because there was an organization that recognized the barriers that many homeowners faced with trees and maintaining trees, specifically removing trees. And as Rebecca stated, there's a trauma that's carried with a lot of trees, specifically on private property, because we don't consider the cost of what it is to maintain a tree. So when you think about what does it cost to get your tree pruned or what does it cost to get your tree removed, often we're hearing numbers from $3,000 to $15,000 or more dollars. And that can be overwhelming for a private landowner or homeowner. And so Trezilliance was created so that we could help relieve the burden from the homeowner so that they can feel comfortable within their place and they can feel safe within their place and comforted in their home. In addition to us removing, we ask the homeowners to plant trees after the removal and after the pruning that's done on their private property. We definitely had trouble with some of our homeowners accepting the trees, and the Trezilliance program that we've created in St. Louis, we found ways to engage the homeowners more in a way that effectively allows them to find their space and their comfort with what we're offering them. We don't have to explain to people what the value of a tree is necessarily. It's good for us to kind of reiterate that, you know, when we're having things like our orientations, which is the very first, it's the first stage of the Trezilliance program for our stakeholders. So before you can even be placed into the program, you must attend the orientation. And in the orientation, we, guide them into what the program is. We give them the timeline. And we, let them know that this isn't just a one and done. This is a program that's specifically based around you and how you see environment in your place. So the program has many different levels. And another level from our program, after we kind of get people comfortable and let them know what it is for us to address the other elephant. Okay, you're asking us to plant trees. How do we do that? Do we plant them? Will you plant them? Who will care for the trees? Well, we offer them a tree keeper's course. Their forestry leaf. We're the ones who guide them through that lesson, and they get to work with our canopy crew during that. So it's not just us offering a community who we think they need something, but it's more about asking, are you open to participating with us to increase tree canopy and create a healthier tree canopy? Because we're not going in removing trees that are, healthy or pruning trees that are healthy. We're doing this for trees that are dead, dying, and diseased.
Mm-hmm. And on that note about the trees that come in and taking those that people want, we have Angie who's calling from Webster Groves. Angie, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Oh, wow. Hi.
Hello. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. We have a tulip tree that has started growing in my front yard, and it's not a large yard, and I know these trees get really big, and it can't stay in the space that it's in, but I'm having a really hard time just cutting it down. So it's not super big, but I'm just wondering, is there some program where you can donate a tree or give a tree? Because if someone has a large green area space that could take this tree, it would be wonderful because they're beautiful, but I just didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Angie, thank you. Kelly?
So we don't have a program where we actually take people's trees that are from their own private property, but we do donate trees. Within Forest Relief, we have a community program that we have applications online right now, and we'll be donating those free trees in the fall for planting. So we don't accept outside donations. However, if you have a tree, we may know someone, so feel free to give us send us an email and let us see if maybe we can just find someone on our own.
Mm-hmm. What is that email?
Oh, you can info at moreleaf, info at moreleaf.org. leaf.org.
Okay, great.
All right.
So Angie reached us at 314-382-8255. We also want to hear from you. What's your experience with tree loss? Join our conversation by dialing 314-382-8255. That's 314-382-TALK. We're going to take a very quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
Welcome back. Let's return to our conversation about people and their relationship with trees. With us today are Rebecca Bennett and Kelly Hicks Holloway. We also are hearing from listeners like you. Silnice is calling from St. Louis. Silnice, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
So I grew up in St. Louis in a downtown project called Clarksville Village. And one of our favorite places to go was to Forest Park. And so it has always been just an amazing place to see nature. And it is now amazing to me to see how different the park looks since the tornado. I never really realized how special the trees were and are until those trees were gone. So it's like it really is a loss. And I often think, wow, how long will it take for trees to come back?
Mm-hmm. Silnice, oh, sure. Was there another point you wanted to make?
No, that was it. It's just, and I still go by all the time, every week, just to look.
Right.
And to see, and how you can just see across the park now, where you could not see across the park, if you were going over Skinker or if you were going up Lindo. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. It really is. Thank you so much for calling and sharing that anecdote, especially with, Silnice remembering what she saw when she was a child growing up and then what she is now not seeing as an adult. I had an opportunity to go by the O'Fallon Park YMCA, that area, and the number of tree stumps that I saw driving through there was really breathtaking. And Kelly, you and I were talking a little bit about that before the break or before we came on the show.
Right. So O'Fallon Park, I know a lot of people like to talk about Forest Park. Forest Park luckily has a lot of donors who will help to rebuild that park. And we can get back to Forest Park, but I'd like to highlight O'Fallon Park for a moment because I think all the homes in that area, their street lines have been already taken away. All of the trees on their streets have been taken away through the ash borer, the
emerald
ash borer. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. So the emerald ash borer was a big deal. So a lot of our ash trees along our street lines, like Clarence and Holly, they've just been taken out. So now there's just this, if you look down the streets right to the park, it's a clear pathway to the park. And now what you saw at the park initially was all of these trees, and now they're gone. And it's just all these stumps. And recently I was speaking with a friend of mine, and, they were telling me about how they have a favorite tree where they go there and they just would, meditate if they had some things going on. They would sit under the trees. And now as we went through that park yesterday, and she was like, where's my tree? Where's my tree? And the tree's gone. And she was devastated. And it just was a reminder that people lived in this neighborhood as well, and the trees meant something to them. Just a year ago, with our very first orientation, you saw as you drove in, which was at the O'Fallon Park YMCA, you saw all of these big, beautiful trees, tulip trees, oak trees, and they're gone, just completely, some snatched out of the ground, some knocked over, and it's devastating. So understanding that, I think that you guys have already talked about how long it takes for a tree to grow. That is going to take a lot of time, and we are doing some plantings. We are planting a few different tree plantings for O'Fallon Park as well as Fairground Park, but recognizing that there's so much history in these parks already. People have been fishing in these parks forever. People, they follow the trails, they bring their children there. There's a skating rink at Fairground Park, and it was lined with trees at first. So now, of course, you can still skate there, but you won't have that canopy to keep you covered. And I just think that there is so much for us to do, and quite often trees are overlooked when we think about the loss in a situation such as like the May 16th tornado.
Hey, Elaine,
Yeah.
I actually want to jump in on this because the first day that we hit the streets and started walking up and down the streets after the tornado to sort of assess damage, there wasn't a dry eye among our street canvassing team because of the ways that human life had been endangered and imperiled, and because of all of the devastation that we saw. But the next day, we invited people to meet us in Forest Park for a land blessing or a prayer walk. And we invited our partners at Tresilience to join us. And there wasn't a dry eye in the park because of the devastation to the trees. Right. And our intention behind that was to recognize that trees help anchor culture and community, and that they are a part of how we see ourselves and understand our landscape, and the many sort of benefits that they provide. And we didn't just want to acknowledge that there was human loss. There was also loss in the wider web of life. There was displacement by more than human beings. Every tree is an entire system, ecosystem in and of itself that supports and sustains millions, if not billions, of organisms, right? And so the ways in which we can have empathy, not only within the human experience, but beyond it, then led us to go on a walk through Forest Park, to go to the trees that had been uprooted, to say prayers and blessings, to leave flowers at these places, to offer our appreciation for all of the ways that they had served and supported life and human life. And then we ended up having a community event in O'Fallon Park as well, because there's no way that you can go by that park, to Kelly's comment, and not be affected by the devastation. So part of this transformation for us is this invitation to recognize ourselves in relationship with the wider web of life and the environment that supports and sustains our existence.
When you were walking through these parks, did you pick up people?
Yeah, there were people who were curious about what we were doing and who came over and who joined us because they had never necessarily seen like a land blessing where you walk and you sing and you say, you give thanks and you lay flowers at the trees that had fallen. So there were certainly people who were curious who leaned in and who joined us. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing.
The experience was amazing. It really was.
Mm-hmm. There's a series that Tresilience and Empower Institute is working on together, the Go Deeper series. What is it? And briefly, how did the collaboration come together? Rebecca?
So this is interesting. The collaboration began because Empower was leading a neighborhood healers training program in O'Fallon Park YMCA. And across the hall, Tresilience was actually leading a workshop, right, with North City homeowners, right?
First orientation.
They were having their first orientation. Kelly and I have known each other for years. Mm-hmm. And she said, I've been looking for you. Right? And I said, I've been looking for you, right? That our Neighborhood Healers program was really about helping community residents be able to stand in the places of trauma, right, and difficulty, and respond to those situations and circumstances to advance the well-being of their neighbors, right, on their blocks, right? And these are the same participants are also living within the catchment of Treesilience's program and are people who have need of support with their trees around their homes. And so we got started in that way and thought, wouldn't it be great if we had a retreat series where we could help people develop a greater appreciation for the role of trees and nature in their lives and get some practical skills around ecological stewardship and be inspired to act as stewards of their local environments, but also address the things that make it difficult for us to connect at times to our landscape. So you heard me talk earlier about the many displacements that have defined the African American experience. You've heard me talk about forested places and trees as providing cover for efforts to get to freedom. But also, those trees have been places of great pain and trauma where we have been lynched, right, and hurt. And increasingly, in an environment that's defined by climate crisis, right, and climate catastrophe, nature isn't just our ally anymore. The changes in patterns are making us experience greater endangerment. And so how do we hold both of those things? That we are a part of nature experiencing and expressing itself. We depend on nature to survive and to be sustained. And we've got a set of forces that are increasingly imperiling human life in dense places and spaces and well-built places and spaces like St. Louis.
And I understand that the first event that you all did together was in December 2024.
Yeah.
So for the tornado to have hit just several months later, is there something that crossed your mind, Kelly, as far as the coincidence of time and place and readiness, maybe?
So I'd like to say that giving stakeholders, within those communities an opportunity to address some systems of trauma as it relates to like environmental spaces, green spaces, I think that it did offer an opportunity for release or for reflection and relationship building. But our first one, we definitely didn't get the numbers that we wanted, but we got the results. We did get the results that we desired.
How so?
So you had Sheila as one of the as our intro, and she talked about her walnut tree. Well, one thing that we thought was really awesome was Sheila was very, she did not want to participate with us at first. And I thought that was very interesting because she loved her walnut tree, but she was just it was having so many problems that she was just frustrated with the situation. But what Sheila showed us was that we're doing the right thing, right? Because Sheila's come to every event. Sheila does everything where she was so dead set on not participating. We've seen her and several other stakeholders lean in after they've had some opportunities for capacity building, after they've had some opportunities to reimagine themselves and re-engage with nature through Treesilience and from the Go Deeper series. We've just noticed that people feel more empowered to participate and be more stewards of their own private trees and their communities. So...
And as we close, Rebecca, is there one sort of takeaway when it comes to something encouraging that you have seen? I think you've shared a little bit of that, Kelly. Rebecca, how about for you?
Well, my hope is that we begin to recognize the relationship between culture and environment as symbiotic and mutually inclusive, right? There's a relationship between cultural trauma and environmental trauma. There's also a relationship between cultural benefit and environmental gain, right, and benefit. When you talked about trees, the African Festival for the Arts is one of the biggest Black events in the city. It has an ancestor tree tree. That tree got knocked down in the tornado, right? And yet you got a whole population of people who were used to coming together and celebrating around a tree, right? How can we leverage that in our efforts to increase and improve environmental stewardship and to heal the relationship between our species and the larger web of life? How can we leverage all those places of culture so that we aren't just talking to people about science, right? The science of place, but we're also helping them understand how integral it is to their cultural identity and well-being.
Rebecca Bennett is founder and principal of Emerging Wisdom and the Empower Institute. Kelly Hicks Holloway is Community Conservation Coordinator for Forest Relief of Missouri. Kelly and Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
This episode was produced by Darius Farner.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.